Of course, before any American soldiers were able to fight in World War I, the United States had to get troops and supplies to Europe. The costs of such an operation were staggering. To raise money and get the resources needed, the United States government implemented extraordinary measures. First, the federal government took control of the economy and gave the president the power to fix prices and regulate certain war-related industries. President Wilson next established the War Industries Board and appointed millionaire financial expert Bernard Baruch to head it. Wilson often called him Dr. Facts because of his ability to assemble, coordinate, and distribute details about war materials and production.
Every man has a right to be wrong in his opinions, but no man has a right to wrong in his facts.
No detail, however seemingly trivial, escaped his scrutiny. Baruch noticed that 8,000 tons of steel were used each year to make ladies' corsets. He asked American women to give up that fashion in support of the war. They did, and the steel saved could be employed to build 2 battleships. The board encouraged companies to use mass production techniques to increase efficiency and eliminate waste. It also established price controls, allocated raw materials, and told manufacturers what they needed to produce in order to help the war effort. As a result, industrial production increased by 20%. Other government agencies controlled the railroads, regulated the use of coal and oil, and mediated labor disputes, avoiding crippling strikes. The War Industries Board also created a massive publicity campaign, encouraging the public to contribute to the war effort by planting victory gardens and observing meatless meals, so food could be sent overseas to the troops. Gasless Sundays and lightless nights soon followed.
My Tuesdays are meatless. My Wednesdays are wheatless. I'm getting more eatless every day.
In order to conserve energy, the War Industries Board even adopted an idea first championed by Benjamin Franklin: daylight savings time, to take advantage of the longer days of summer and use less electricity. And finally, to raise the $33 million cost of the war, the government took 2 actions. First, it established an excess profits or war profits tax on corporate earnings and higher income taxes on wealthier citizens. Taxes were raised on tobacco, liquor, and luxury goods as well. These actions collected about 1/3 of the money needed. The rest was raised by appealing to Americans' strong sense of patriotism. Liberty bonds were sold. These, in essence, loaned money to the government to fight the war. Movie stars and newspapers, parades and billboards all carried the message to buy bonds. Amazingly, on average, every adult American lent the war effort about $400, a large amount at the time. Even with the money necessary to fight the war, the government realized they would need the popular support of Americans, most of whom had been either neutral or openly against involvement. Therefore, President Wilson appointed a former muckraking journalist, George Creel, to head the Committee on Public Information, our nation's first propaganda agency. Creel was a giant when it came to advertising and public relations. He called his committee the world's greatest adventure in advertising. Creel convinced the best writers, artists, musicians, and advertising people of the day to help him sell the war. From booklets and books for Americans in various languages to anti-government propaganda messages for our enemies. Creel even got into the movie business with features such as Under Four Flags, with the help of famous film director D.W. Griffith. These pro-war movies were not only hits, they actually made money for the cause. $852,744. Remarkable when you realize that it only cost a nickel to see a movie back then. Simply put, Creel helped make an unpopular war popular. His masterstroke was the creation of a national force of 75,000 men who would deliver a patriotic 4-minute speech anytime, anywhere. The 4-minute men spoke on the draft, rationing, bond drives, and victory gardens. By the end of the war, they had delivered more than 7.5 million speeches to 314 million listeners. Musicians gave voice to the war. Songs like Till We Meet Again, It's a long, long way to Tipperary. Keep the home fires burning, and over there, kept American spirits high. Meanwhile, the immense task of transporting troops to France began. After years of relying on foreign vessels to take American goods overseas, America's supply of ships was limited. Consequently, shipyard workers were exempt from the draft or given deferments to make shipbuilding a priority industry. A new construction technique called fabrication, a process by which parts were built elsewhere and then assembled in a central shipyard, substantially reduced the time needed to build ships. The system worked, and worked well. In a single day, appropriately the 4th of July, 1918, America launched 95 ships. Rear Admiral William S. Sims decided that the best way to get troops and supplies safely past the German U-boats was to use a convoy system. That meant that merchant and troop transport ships would cross the Atlantic in large groups, escorted by a guard of heavily armed destroyers and cruisers circling the fleet. The plan cut shipping losses in half. 100 submarine chaser boats and 500 airplanes were also used to stop U-boats from sinking ships bound for Europe. Remarkably, of the 2 million men who sailed to Europe during the war, only 100 were lost to U-boat torpedoes. General John J. Pershing led the American Expeditionary Force. Pershing believed in aggressive action in combat and was highly regarded by his superiors and the men he commanded. Black Jack, as he was popularly known among the troops, was understood to be fair, courageous, and a top-notch administrator. At first, American troops were employed mainly as replacements for European casualties. By April of 1918, Pershing convinced the Allies that Americans should fight as a separate army.
We came American, we shall remain American, and go into battle with Old Glory over our heads. I will not parcel out American boys.
Accordingly, American soldiers, called doughboys because of their white belts that they cleaned with pipe clay or dough, fought together under the command of French Marshal Ferdinand Foch. By now, the government of Russia had been overthrown by the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin. And Russia withdrew from the war, signing a peace treaty with Germany. This meant the Germans could now consolidate their army and concentrate on a single front. By May of 1918, the Germans managed to get within 50 miles of Paris. America had arrived over there just in time to help stop the German advance at Cantigny. A few weeks later, the doughboys helped thwart the German attacks at Château-Thierry and below Wood and Reims. In late summer, the Allies, with America's help, triumphed in the Second Battle of the Marne, and in September mounted offensives against Germans at Saint-Mihiel and in the Meuse-Argonne regions, where 1.2 million U.S. troops fought. By October, it was clear the tide had turned against Germany and the Central Powers, as German troops began to retreat all along the front. The victory was not without devastating cost, however. All told, the United States lost 48,000 men in battle. Approximately 62,000 died of disease, and another 200,000 were wounded and needed immediate medical care.
The Army is only 12 miles away. I have Americans, English, Irish, and French, and apart, in the corners, are Germans. They have to watch each other die side by side. The cannon goes day and night, and the shells are breaking over and around us. I have to write many sad letters to American mothers.
Thankfully, an end to the slaughter was not far off, although on the home front, the effects of the war were enormous. From fines and imprisonment for those who opposed the war to new roles for women and African Americans, World War I was proving to be a major turning point in American history.